Hello, my name is Tony. Vietnam War movies. There was a lot of them in the 70s, with World War II growing more distant and less immediate in the collective memories of the public. Seems Hollywood felt it ought to turn its attention to the more recent conflict as cannon fodder for war movie entertainment. A potential disadvantage in doing this, though, may be that the war in Vietnam was a long one that did not result in a positive, easily rationalized victory for America. With the prior two world wars, no matter what eras, horrors or tragedies occurred and were depicted or explored on screen, the outcomes of both were generally seen as triumphs of the free world against the forces of tyranny and oppression, or at least that was the impression we all got. War is hell, but the world came through it as well as could be expected. Also, this is the 70s after all, and it was a fair bet that filmmakers were not going to be seeking to represent the Vietnam War as anything other than a depressing, misguided catastrophe with far-reaching political and sociological consequences. With World War II in particular, there was a consensus amongst the Allied countries and their citizens that it was necessary, essential for the survival of the free world. Nam was mostly an American thing that America did, and it divided opinion amongst the American people and the world in general. I don't know that war naturally lends itself to being realistically defined in the context of popularity, of popular and unpopular, but in certain quarters, Vietnam has been categorized as an unpopular war. No one went to its birthday parties, danced with it at the disco, invited it round for afternoon tea, or gave it a shag in the basement. And it seemed to end abruptly in desperate, chaotic retreat and abandonment. Right, our work here is done, whatever it was, let's get the hell out of Dodge. What, if anything, was achieved by it, I don't know, and it's not for someone as ill-informed as me to speculate or pronounce upon. All I know is it was on the news in Britain every evening at tea time for fucking years. Then suddenly it wasn't, and no one told us what the final score was or how the team felt about it. No one really wins any war, but there was a distinct impression someone lost in Vietnam. That loss, however, was Hollywood's gain. My favourite theatre of conflict when it comes to war movies is World War II. Maybe it's something I'm more invested in. I was born 16 years after it ended, and grew up with all the entertainment media, films, books, documentaries surrounding it. My grandfather on my father's side, a man I never met, he died a year before I was born, was on the beaches of Normandy for D-Day. He boogied through France. A butcher by trade, he slaughtered random stray cattle in the French countryside to augment soldiers' rations as they marched on. It's rumoured he was at the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, the infamous Nazi death camp. I get the impression he never spoke much about any of it because that's all I know, and there's no one left alive I can ask about it now, so that's all I'll ever know, I suppose. Vietnam movies are not really my thing. I lack that historical connection. I found The Deer Hunter off-putting, like watching 2 hours of still life with 20 minutes of action, the scenes in country tacked on. Plus, the major flaw which pissed me off mightily was Christopher Walken's chosen post-war occupation of heroin addict and professional Russian roulette player. Shoot up and put a loaded pistol to your temple every night for a living, life expectancy, even with the uncanniest luck in the universe, 2 weeks maximum. De Niro finds him still at it nearly a year later, and it's only then his luck runs out, and so does his brains. Struck me as plain fucking stupid. Apocalypse Now I like much better, an epic American war opera, a colossal nightmare foray into the heart of darkness, mad as a rat, and much more my stripe. I preferred the smaller, more pugnacious pictures that repurposed the war from alternative perspectives with alternative themes. Rolling Thunder, Go Tell the Spartans. First Blood is my favourite Nam movie. Its reimagining of the Frankenstein story, what becomes of the monster you create when cast out and abandoned to its own devices, made for one of the very best action-adventure flicks around, whilst retaining a stark and dark psychological edge. Easy to view it superficially, but its power to be provocative should not be underestimated. Then there's Cutter's Way, the phenomenal and eviscerating autopsy of a 60s and 70s counterculture terminally corrupted by the devastating spectre of the Vietnam War. Cutter's Way was the last word on the subject. The first word preceding Cutter's Way in 1978 was Who'll Stop the Rain. Valued Patreon patron Craig suggested or requested a review, and it's my policy to do whatever I can to satisfy such requests wherever possible. Not only is he paying, but it was also on my to-do list, and now it's not, as it's done. Directed by Carol Rice, who rose to prominence in the 60s with the seminal British kitchen sink drama Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, Who'll Stop the Rain is based on the 1974 novel Dog Soldiers by Robert Stone. Personally, I prefer the title of the novel. Here and there, it's the title the film went under after release, but that was later hijacked by Neil Marshall's frantic live cartoon werewolf flick in 2002. For whatever reason, the decision was made to use the title of a Creedence Clearwater Revival song, and that's how it is now known. The song and some other Creedence compositions pepper the soundtrack. Disillusioned Vietnam War correspondent John Converse Michael Moriarty wants out. Sickened and disgusted by the endless carnage and the ineptitude of the high command, he wants to go home and score some of the American dream for his wife, his child, and himself. His means of buying into that dream is 2 kilos of heroin sourced from Charmaine Gail Strickland, a Saigon dealer. Converse coerces the reluctant assistance of his friend, merchant seaman and ex-marine Ray Hicks, Nick Nolte. Ray is headed for home by boat, and Converse wants him to smuggle the stash on board and back to San Francisco, where his wife Marge, Tuesday Weld, will pay him for delivering the drugs. Although Ray gets the merchandise safely ashore, there are a few stumbling blocks. First and foremost, it's all a setup, orchestrated by crooked DEA agent Anthony Zerbe, who cooked it up in cahoots with Charmaine. He wants the drugs to sell himself. In his employ are 2 mindless thugs, Danskin Richard Masua and Smitty Ray Sharkey. Then there's Marge. Unbeknownst to John and Ray, she's a massive pillhead, addicted to prescription drugs, as much a junkie as any mainline heroin user on the street. She doesn't have the money to pay Ray when he turns up at her place with the dope, a place which Danskin and Smitty noisily and incompetently home invade to steal away the smack. Ray disarms and very pleasingly beats the living shit out of both men. He and Marge go on the run. Dropping Marge's daughter with her grandparents, they head to Los Angeles and Ray's shack. Ray decides they need to find a buyer, and quickly, for the drugs and lay low with the cash. He digs up some automatic weaponry he's buried. By now though, out of pills and withdrawing painfully, Marge is an added burden. Ray administers small amounts of heroin to ease her discomfort, which results in her being almost permanently high most of the time. Ray looks up an old contact, Eddie Peace, Charles Hayde. Eddie is the kind of grisly sleazo who could make the skin on an alligator crawl. He dupes Ray and Marge into attending a drugs party with yuppie oddballs Gerald James Cranner and Jody Timothy Blake, on the pretext they are potential buyers. It's a scam by Peace to get Ray to part with the stash for a paltry $6,000. Ray makes sure everyone but he and Marge get injected with heroin, and they make their exit. Danskin and Smitty intercept John on his return to the US. They beat and torture him to reveal the whereabouts of Ray and Marge and the heroin. As John does no shit, whatever they do isn't going to yield any results. Antil intervenes, and taking John along, they set about tracking down Ray and Marge. The couple have travelled to the mountains of New Mexico, Ray's old stamping ground, an abandoned 60s hippie commune and farm, where Ray had set up loudspeakers and lights in the trees for parties and love-ins. His rig is still operational. It's not very long though before the Antil mob show up, threatening to kill John unless they get the drugs. The situation is escalating to a climactic confrontation in which there may be no winners, only losers. Even minus the backdrop of Vietnam, this would have been a good film. However, pernicious vestiges of the war are ever present, and add meaningfully to the context of what is really a complex set of character studies. So it's not just good, it's largely terrific. It's a mix of genres: war movie, pursuit thriller, road movie, action drama, but everything integrates seamlessly, all thanks to a relatively tight script by Judith Raskow, an author of the novel Robert Stone, and Carol Rice's considered and thoughtful direction. Rice exercises an eye for the poetic and the lyrical, which is massively complemented by Richard H. Klein's lavishly gritty camera work. It all looks great and runs along smoothly with the helping hands of evident care and precise execution. Nick Nolte is magnificent as Ray, a bitter and resentful grunt much into Nietzschean philosophy. As he puts it, all my life I've been taking shit from inferior people, no more, which accurately sums up his mindset. He, like everyone else in the film, is on a journey of self-discovery. Oh Christ, it sounds cliched and trite for me to observe that. The journey, or my journey. Some new age soul-searching tripe usually trotted out by self-righteous vegans and people who once had a precancerous mole removed, like they're on some great existential exodus to self-realization and the actualization of their inner grace and beauty. Yeah, The journey, folks. But that's overuse and glib misappropriation by arseholes for you. Here in Who'll Stop the Rain, it feels genuine and authentic, because the journey the focal characters are on is one fraught with dangerous pitfalls, and any enlightenment forthcoming isn't likely to be of the life-affirming kind. Their journey isn't going to end in a palatial Montecito-based jam-making video for a streaming channel, more likely to end in overdose, bullets in the brain, and humiliating death in the dirt. Anyway, as I was saying, Nick Nolte is magnificent. And so is the criminally underused Tuesday Weld, as a woman who never thought of herself as a junkie or her husband as a drug trafficker, until reality, in the form of Ray and his revelations, along with the first-time experience of withdrawal, smacked her round the chops. Weld is such a gifted actress. She can precisely convey in seconds of screen time the full range of emotional, physical and psychological complexities of a woman trapped in a downward spiral of addiction over which she has no control. Tuesday Weld gives the best performance in the movie, and that's considering she is up against some really stiff competition. The relationship between Marge and Ray is beautifully handled as they transition from mutual resentment to something bordering on love. Early on, it would be easy for Ray to cut her loose and go it alone, abandon her to her fate. He chooses not to do this. The Marines taught him to honour and respect a duty of care to comrades. He can't shake that training. It's ingrained. He treats her with an unsolicited tenderness and concern, initially feeding her addiction for selfish reasons just so she can function well enough so they can get away. Later, it's because he actually cares about her and wants her to be well, or at least to not be in pain. The transition is a subtle one, which the actors, the script and Rice handle with effective poignancy and sensitivity. Michael Moriarty is a revelation as the thoughtless and slipshod journo. He wearily assimilates that everything's gone south and he's going with it via the best line in the film. "I've been waiting all my life to fuck up like this." With a wry half smirk and a faintly quizzical expression, it's as if the horrors he experienced in Vietnam have prepped him to be almost instantly acquiescent and unsurprised in the face of the seismic screw-up he's caused back home. Well, what did I expect? Anthony Zerbe is likewise beat perfect as a corrupt and ruthless agent out to offload the drugs for his own financial gain. He's made a deal with someone or other, and it's suggested that if he doesn't deliver, he himself might be in big trouble. Always a compelling screen villain, this was and remains one of his best bad guy turns. Then there's the supporting double act of Mazur and Sharkey as Antill's intellectually challenged rent-a-goons on the payroll. These two are as mad and delusional as they come. Their stupidity and lack of insight is frighteningly epic. Sharkey especially really believes that, as an ex-GI with a criminal record and jail time on his resume, he's got a shot at joining the FBI for his work with Antill. There's more chance of me joining an LGBTQ+ activist chapter on a mission to paint dolphins with rainbows. They're lethal opponents, but boy are they dumb. Ray takes on Antill and his equally bent Mexican DEA counterpart and collaborator Danskin and Smitty in the foothills of New Mexico. He's armed with an automatic assault rifle, rock music blasting from the speakers and some flashing lights. It's a metaphor for a battle between a jaded and diminished counterculture and the soulless racketeers of a new post-Watergate cynicism and amorality. In a rural disco of death, Ray slaughters Smitty and Danskin, but not before Danskin puts a bullet in him. Antill and his partner in crime get away, as does Marge and John with the drugs, thanks to Ray holding the line. Ray has arranged to meet Marge and John beside some railroad tracks. Bleeding heavily with his assault rifle propped against his shoulder, he marches down the disused line, growling Marine chants as he goes. The training just won't go away. When Marge and John find him, he's sat beside the tracks, bled out and dead, some macabre monument to the Vietnam War planted beside a disused railway line leading to bloody nowhere. John buries him using the assault rifle as a makeshift marker. Then he empties the heroin into the sand. The golden key to the American dream exposed as nothing more than an impotent opiate, dispersing, dissipating, and becoming one with the dead earth. Antill turns up and scrabbles to salvage some of the dope. His Mexican counterpart just reaches for his shotgun. We don't see what happens to him next, only John and his addict wife driving away to whatever their future holds. The question posed by the film's title doesn't get a hopeful answer. It's no one. The Vietnam War reshaped American culture for all time, and perhaps not in the most positive of ways. Idealism was a major casualty, replaced by disillusionment, paranoia, and grave mistrust in the movers and shakers and Machiavellian machinery of big government. The characters in Who'll Stop the Rain are all, directly or indirectly, casualties or products of the influence of Vietnam, and they don't paint a pretty or life-enhancing picture. All are victims of their inability to think things through and make honest, sensible, realistic choices. It's as if a sort of nihilistic myopia clouds their better judgment. Desperation, addiction, crushing disenchantment, greed and self-destruction define and fuel their pursuit of that one quick fix to mend their lives. A quick fix that doesn't exist and wouldn't work if it did, because life isn't like that. Not anymore in the aftermath of war. The film is intelligent and compelling viewing that flopped like swamp shit at the box office, with all the attention and accolades being heaped on The Deer Hunter and Coming Home. I would choose to watch it in preference to those two on any day of the week, and I would recommend it to anyone with an appreciation for something less sentimentalized, with a far starker and darker sense of naked honesty and the consequences of bad choices. Thank you for your time and attention. Do whatever you want to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, be a patron on my Patreon thing, make a financial contribution via the thanks button. This is one of those reviews I was unsure about doing, and I was undecided on how to approach it exactly. Then I thought, when in doubt, just jump in and do it and hope for the best. For better or worse, this has been it. I'm sure someone out there will let me know just where I've got things wrong and how I fucked it all up. I always look forward to that, so feel free. Ciao, pilgrims.